Further, Jesus did not have what would be considered a preliminary hearing, but he was given a series of preliminary examinations before the Sanhedrin and Pilate. These examinations were not preliminary hearings, but they played a role in determining the charges against Jesus and the proceedings that followed. It's important to keep in mind that the Jewish legal system was based on a religious system and forbade trials being held before the morning sacrifice because the daily morning ritual at the temple, including the burnt offering, was considered a foundational part of the day's religious observance. The entire morning ritual had to be completed before any other religious or legal proceedings, like trials, could begin. This was a way of ensuring that the people's relationship with God was established before engaging in any other matters. I find it laughable that the justice system that oversaw the arrest and trial of Christ, one based on honor and fairness, and built on religious order, would allow for a trial, let alone a sentence, to take place with, again, evidence that was lacking. I say this to highlight the fact that the rules and regulations in place to conduct trials were purposely ignored in order to stop Christ from challenging their system and changing people's hearts. GotQuestions.org explains, the trials before Jewish authorities, the religious trials, showed the degree to which the Jewish leaders hated him because they carelessly disregarded many of their own laws. There were several illegalities involved in these trials from the perspective of Jewish law. 1. No trial was to be held during feast time. 2. Each member of the court was to vote individually to convict or acquit, but Jesus was convicted by acclamation. 3. If the death penalty was given, a night must pass before the sentence was carried out, however. Only a few hours passed before Jesus was placed on the cross. 4. The Jews had no authority to execute anyone. 5. No trial was to be held at night, but this trial was held before dawn. 6. The accused was to be given counsel or representation, but Jesus had none. 7. The accused was not to be asked self-incriminating questions, but Jesus was asked if he was the Christ. The Sanhedrin relied on a lot of false witnesses and accusations for its case against Christ. For example, it accused Jesus of claiming he would destroy and rebuild the temple in 3 days. This accusation was based on misinterpretations of Jesus' statements about his body, which was not the physical temple. John chapter 2 verse 19 reads, Jesus answered and said unto them, Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. The verse refers to Jesus' own body being destroyed, his death, and then resurrected, being raised. This verse is often interpreted as a prophecy of Jesus' death and resurrection. The Sanhedrin used this misinterpretation to accuse Jesus of blasphemy, a charge that could be punished by death under Jewish law, while the leaders failed to bring forth any credible evidence against Christ. This did not stop them from going forward. The Jewish leaders presented Pilate with charges of Jesus being a seditious leader and claiming to be king, which was a threat to Roman authority. The narrative describes Jesus being taken to Caiaphas' house, where the religious scholars and leaders of the time were assembled. The high priest Caiaphas considered Jesus' claims to be the Messiah and the Son of God a threat to Roman rule. They argued that Jesus' teachings and actions were causing unrest and could lead to rebellion. Caiaphas demanded that Jesus state whether he was the Messiah, the Son of God. Matthew chapter 26 verse 63, but Jesus held his peace. And the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. BibleRef.com explains, Caiaphas wants Jesus to say something in front of the council they can use to charge him with blasphemy and sentence him to death. Matthew chapter 26 verses 57 through 62. He has demanded Jesus answer a charge from two witnesses who claimed Jesus said he would destroy the temple in Jerusalem and rebuild it in 3 days. The supposed blasphemy and false quotation, John chapter 2 verses 19 through 21, was not enough to condemn Jesus to death. Caiaphas needed more. Jesus, though, would not even answer that charge. He knew they had misquoted him, and that he had been talking about his own future resurrection, not the destruction of the city temple. He also knew that to get to his resurrection, he would have to be sentenced to death by the men before whom he stood now. He would not try to defend himself from false charges. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 7. Bible Ref continues, explaining, Caiaphas' strategy might have been purely procedural. If Jesus resists, they may be able to charge him with refusing to answer a question backed by a legal oath from the high priest. If he answers that he is not the Messiah, the crowds will no longer be stirred to possible rebellion. John chapter 11 verse 48. If Jesus says he is the Son of God, the council will use that declaration to sentence him to death. Of course, that requires these men to refuse to believe Jesus is, in fact, the Messiah. John chapter 5 verses 39 and 40. As it turns out, Jesus will answer this challenge with absolute truth, leaving no room for doubt about what he means. That's enough for his enemies to declare this sham trial a success. Matthew chapter 26 verses 64 through 66. Mark chapter 14 verses 61 and 62. But he held his peace and answered nothing. Again the high priest asked him, and said unto him, Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am. And ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power, and coming in the clouds. Notice Jesus initially does not answer the high priest's question, but then affirms that he is the Messiah, the Son of God, and also reveals that he will be seated at the right hand of the Mighty One, and will return on the clouds. This declaration by Jesus affirms his divinity and indicates his future glory. Jesus was accused of blasphemy in Matthew 26 verse 65, where the high priest tore his clothes and declared that Jesus had spoken blasphemy after he said he was the Son of God. The high priest claimed that no further witnesses were needed because they had already heard the blasphemy. Back to Matthew's Gospel. Matthew chapter 26 verse 65. Then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, He hath spoken blasphemy, what further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now ye have heard his blasphemy. This is in response to Jesus' statement about being the Son of God and his future position at the right hand of power. Jesus replies, So you say? This, along with Jesus' previous statements about his future position, is interpreted as blasphemy. The high priest tears his clothes, a sign of mourning or distress at hearing blasphemy. He then declares Jesus guilty of blasphemy and asks for no more witnesses. So you say is read in certain translations, whereas the King James Version reads, And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all. From John chapter 11 verse 49. Ellicott's commentary for English readers explains of this verse, and one of them, named Caiaphas. Compare notes on Matthew chapter 26 verse 3, Luke chapter 3 verse 2. His proper name was Joseph, and the name Caiaphas is the Syriac form of Cephas. He, like Peter, took the name of Rockman as a title to indicate his work. For the succession of high priests at this time, see Josephus, Antiquities of the Jews,